In one case, Rudy Giuliani had to admit, because he's a lawyer, he's going to get disbarred if he lies in court. And you could lie at a press conference 24/7,
Right.
but once you're inside court. And they said, Mr. Giuliani, do you have any evidence to show that the election was stolen? And he's like, no.
Hey everyone, welcome back. So in this one, we've got Cenk Uygur sitting down with Tim Pool for what turns into an absolutely explosive conversation about what really happened with the 2020 election claims and the January 6th events. Cenk comes in ready to dismantle every conspiracy theory with receipts, while Tim pushes back on the mainstream narrative. What makes this fascinating is watching how the entire exchange unfolds when someone actually brings the evidence to the table. You're going to want to stick around, because the moment Cenk brings up what happened in the courtroom is absolutely jaw-dropping, and it completely shifts where this conversation goes. Real quick, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from right now. I love seeing how far this community reaches. Alright, let's get into it.
Knowing that you lost the goddamn election.
It's actually simpler than that. They don't need to go to the state legislatures. It would be the House delegations.
No, that's the last part of the steps. When the state legislatures say that Trump won when they know he didn't win. By the way, more credit to Republicans in a second. When they say he didn't win, they say he won when he didn't. It then goes back to the House, because then it becomes an open question, a political question that the House has to decide. And the House, even though there was more Democrats at the time, they vote by state. And the Republicans had more states.
Yes.
So it was actually, if you're going to do a coup, it is a logical coup plan. And they discussed other coup plans. Michael Flynn proposed rolling out the tanks and doing martial law. They had a 3-hour conversation about it. Now, let me give credit to courageous Republicans. Even Trump administration guys who I despise. Everyone, the reason Trump didn't roll out the tanks is because everyone in his administration that was in the room said, we will all resign immediately if you roll out tanks against the American people. Okay, so credit to those Trump administration people. And then the state legislatures filled with what I think are radical right-wingers, the great majority of them said, no, we're not going to do the fake electors. And they deserve a lot of credit for that.
Are you familiar with Texas v. Pennsylvania? It was the original jurisdiction lawsuit between Texas and Pennsylvania, arguing that several states violated the Constitution by altering the rules of the election, not at the legislative level, but through the judiciary and the executive branches. Mm-hmm. And so Texas's argument was, if Pennsylvania is acting in violation of the Constitution, it's subverting our vote in this process, and we want the Supreme Court to rule on this.
Okay, and how did it turn out for them?
The Supreme Court refused to even hear the case.
Yeah.
So this is a problem. This is what actually ignites fervor and expands the conflict. Thomas and Alito agreed that when a state has a dispute with another state, as per the Constitution, original jurisdiction means they must hear it. But the other justices just said, no, we won't. And so what ends up happening is the case expanded to include, I think, 48 states with like 24 versus 24 or whatever, or it was like 23, 25, where half the states were saying, you know, we've got 5 or 6 states that have altered the rules of the election, but the Constitution explicitly states the legislation must handle how the elections are handled. So if a governor changes the rules or a judiciary rules on it, it's not gone to the legislature yet. The legislative branch must then, they have to vote on it.
So Tim, you know, they can bring that suit. There's no problem with that.
They were all thrown out. My point is this. My point is this. If you've got people who are saying, how come the rules were changed in Pennsylvania? The lower court agreed that it violated the state constitution, but the higher court said, we're going to do it anyway. We believe it's acceptable. So then you have people across the country saying, whoa, hold on. If we're all agreeing to vote in this process, and this state's even disputing amongst themselves, we need this adjudicated. And they said, no. Then what do you get? The language of the unheard.
Yeah. So Tim, there's 2 different things here. So let's separate them out because it's really important. Did Trump actually win? That case was litigated over 60 times, and he presented him and his side allies presented 0 evidence.
How many of those cases were dismissed on standing versus merit?
A bunch of them, but a huge number of them decided it on the merits.
That's not true.
Oh, come on, Tim. Come on, Tim. And then in all the ones that they decided on the merits, how come the Trump side never presented any evidence?
I guess it depends on the specific cases, right?
No, it doesn't depend. They have no evidence.
If we're talking...
In one case, Rudy Giuliani had to admit, because he's a lawyer, he's going to get disbarred if he lies in court. And you could lie at a press conference 24/7, but once you're inside court. And they said, Mr. Giuliani, do you have any evidence to show that the election was stolen? And he's like, no. Because they don't have any evidence. They're lying. They've been lying the whole time.
I agree the election was not stolen.
Okay.
Or it depends on how you define stolen, I guess, right?
No, you could define it stolen in 1,000 ways that are BS.
But
it was not stolen,
Some
period.
people argue that Pennsylvania changing its voting laws in violation of the Constitution is stealing an election.
No, that's a nonsense argument.
This breakdown is wild because what Cenk just laid out is literally how coups work in history. When he said, if you're going to do a coup, it is a logical coup plan, he's explaining something most people don't understand. This wasn't just chaos, this was organized. The fake electors, the state legislatures, the House delegation vote by state, all of it was calculated. And here's the scary part. The only reason it didn't work was because people in the room told him, we will all resign immediately if you roll out tanks against the American people. Think about that. We were that close to martial law being discussed seriously. Michael Flynn literally proposed it. They had a 3-hour conversation about rolling out military force on American citizens. But what gets me is when Cenk pivots to the evidence. Because after all that coup planning, all those schemes, when it came time to actually prove anything in court, over 60 times, and he presented him and his side allies presented zero. Evidence. Zero. Not weak evidence, not questionable evidence, nothing. And the Rudy moment is where this all collapses. When Cenk said Rudy Giuliani had to admit, because he's a lawyer, he's going to get disbarred if he lies in court, that is the difference between press conferences and legal proceedings. You can say whatever you want on TV, but when you're under oath, when your law license is on the line, suddenly the truth comes out. And what did Rudy say when asked, do you have any evidence to show that the election was stolen? He said no. That tells you everything about what this whole thing was.
So,
Semantic
okay,
argument.
so no, it's super important. It's super important because I don't want the right wing thinking that it was like, oh, fraudulent election and Hugo Chavez or the ghost of Hugo Chavez and a kraken and a mule went in and changed the votes. No one changed the votes. Period. And so because Trump and Fox News and Newsmax lie about it 24/7 and Fox News had to pay $800 million for their lies, people think that the election was stolen when it wasn't. You know what election was stolen? And then I'll tell you the reaction that happened instead when it happened to the left wing. 2000. Brazenly stolen from Al Gore. So let me explain the details and then I'll relate it back to today. Okay. So Al Gore not only won the popular vote, and nobody disputes that, but after the case was over and the election was over, all the news organizations went in and did a recount of the entire state of Florida. And under every kind of way of counting, Al Gore won the state of Florida. So he got flat out robbed. He won the Electoral College as well. But the Supreme Court in that case said, no, I don't care what Florida law is. I don't care that we've been making an argument for states' rights our whole lives. That liar Scalia, that piece of crap hypocrite, was like, yeah, did I say states' rights for decades? I mean, screw states' rights. You know what I'm saying? States don't have any goddamn rights. And they ordered Florida to stop the recount. They said, we don't want to know who won. Because then we might find out Al Gore won. We don't want Al Gore winning. We just want to steal this goddamn election and give it to our buddy George Bush. And they outright stole it. Okay. Now, having said that, Supreme Court rules, the Supreme Court rules. We move on. Okay. Nobody rioted. The Democrats haven't been crying about that. Like, oh no, Al Gore should have been the president. Al Gore is actually the current president, etc. They let it go. It was a great injustice. And we noted for the history books, and I noted as an example here, but we let it go. We didn't go around going, no, Al Gore's still the president,
But in
and losing
2016
the goddamn minds that I see with the right
But in
wing.
2016, they did.
No, they didn't. See, I'm glad you're bringing that up. See, that's another super important distinction because Hillary Clinton whined about losing the election in 2,000 ways. Oh, it was the Russians. It was my dog ate my homework.
Funded the Steele dossier.
Steele dossier. The Bernie bros did it. Blah, 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 blah. Because she didn't want to accept responsibility. And the establishment media didn't want to accept responsibility because they all loved Hillary Clinton. They all hated Bernie Sanders. They all hated Donald Trump. They hated anyone who wasn't the establishment. Hillary Clinton is the epicenter of the establishment. So they couldn't live with the fact that they were preposterously wrong. You know what got under their skin the most? Me. because I told them, hey, you idiots, Hillary Clinton's going to lose.
Go to Michigan.
Right? And Bernie Sanders has a 12-point lead on Donald Trump, you morons, right? And they're like, no, I think the establishment is correct. I think America loves the establishment.
But you know what it really was is that to them, Bernie and Trump are effectively the same thing.
Of course. Actually, they fear Bernie way more than they fear Trump.
Probably.
Yeah, and the reason is because Trump's full of crap. He's only in it for himself, whereas Bernie actually would change the system. And so when they know that Bernie would change the system, they're like, anything but Bernie. Shut his ass out. Don't give him any media coverage. Don't let him do debates. Put the debates up against the Super Bowl. Do anything you can to make sure you silence Bernie.
The Fox News piece is crucial here. When Cenk brings up Fox News had to pay $800 million for their lies, that's not just a fine. That's a legal admission. You don't pay $800 million unless you know you absolutely cannot win in court. That money represents every single lie they told about voting machines, about fraud, about stolen elections. All of it proven false in discovery. Now, the 2000 comparison is where this gets really interesting historically. Because Cenk is absolutely right when he said Al Gore won the state of Florida, he got flat out robbed, he won the Electoral College as well. Every independent recount done after the Supreme Court stopped the count showed Gore won. The Supreme Court literally prevented Florida from finishing their own state recount. That is actually what a stolen election looks like. But here's what matters. When Cenk said, Supreme Court rules, we move on okay, nobody rioted, that is the difference in how parties handle loss. Democrats were furious. It was stolen. But they accepted the institutional decision and moved forward. No coup attempts, no fake electors, no storming anything. The Bernie section hits different because it exposes what establishments actually fear. When he said Bernie Sanders has a 12-point lead, you morons, he's talking to media and party elites who knew Bernie could win, but chose to suppress him anyway. Because Bernie would actually change the system. And that's the one thing power structures cannot allow. They would rather lose to someone they can control than win with someone they cannot.
Oh, Trump, he could be allowed on TV all day long. Oh, let's have fun. Oh, what's the major proposal of Donald Trump back in 2016? Oh, a lot of shouting about the wall and immigrants, etc. But what's the only thing that Trump did? Giant tax cuts for the rich and for corporations. The establishment loved Trump up until that bill passed. I swear to God, you watch old Young Turks clips and I say, they're not going to turn on him until this giant tax cut for the rich passes.
Well, you know what really got him positive press? When he bombed Syria.
Yeah, and then he bombed Syria, and they're like, yes, right? So now
he's a president.
So, yeah, they turn on him later when he does anti-establishment stuff, but he's not doing anti-establishment stuff for the average voter. Yeah, he tried to play ball. He loves stoners. His super PACs took $100 million from Sheldon Adelson twice.
Yeah,
Sheldon Adelson.
John Bolton.
Yeah,
he brings him in.
He brings in John Bolton, who's a warmonger and a neocon. Sheldon Adelson owns casinos in Vegas, but he mainly owns casinos in Macau. You know that, like, so Trump did like half a dozen giant favors for him, but the biggest favor was, two biggest favors were, he basically dismissed corruption charges in China against him, and he allowed him to bring his money back from China. Instead of a 35%, he created a special rate of 8% for repatriating taxes from a foreign country. So a guy who, he's deceased now, but back then, a guy who had his main line of business in China had bought the U.S. president. He gave him $100 million 2 different times and totally bought him. And Donald Trump was 100% his bitch. His bitch so much that not only did he give him every single thing that he asked for, but he also made his wife, he gave her a presidential Medal of Honor. It's the highest honor America has, and he threw it in like a tchotchke. Like, oh yeah, if you act now, Sheldon, I'll also take your rando wife and give her a presidential medal, okay, of honor. And he's like,
the Sheldon Adelson story is absolutely disgusting and shows you how corruption actually works in practice. When Cenk says he took his super PACs, took $100 million from Sheldon, that's not a donation. That's a purchase. That's buying a president. And what did Sheldon get for his money? Everything. Corruption charges in China dismissed. Special 8% tax rate to bring money back from foreign countries instead of the normal 35%. You're telling me a guy whose main business is in casinos in Macau just happens to get every single favor he needs from the US government. That's not coincidence. That's transactional corruption. But the medal part is what makes this so brazenly corrupt, it's almost funny. The Presidential Medal of Honor is supposed to be the highest civilian award in America. It's for people who made extraordinary contributions to the nation. And what does Cenk say happened? He gave her a presidential medal, threw it in like a tchotchke, like a bonus gift, like one of those infomercials. Act now and we'll also give you this medal for your wife. This is what people mean when they say the system is bought. It's not abstract. It's not theoretical. It's $100 million in exchange for policy changes worth billions. And when Cenk said he gave him $100 million to different times and totally bought him, that's exactly what happened. Complete transactional purchase of American policy. And the crazy part? This isn't even hidden. This is all public record. The donations are reported. The policy changes are documented. We know this happened. And yet half the country still thinks this person was somehow anti-establishment or draining any swamp. You don't drain a swamp by filling it with your own billionaire donors. So what do you guys think of this? Leave your thoughts down in the comments. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.